Hey everyone, welcome to another Tip Tuesday. This tip is actually a little more relevant to current events, and that is coronavirus COVID-19. It's something that's definitely impacted the medical community internationally and also impacted efforts for medical students, and also really a lot of businesses and a lot of communities around the world. It is imperative that we use our platforms for awareness and encouraging our community to do their most to help with respect to controlling the virus and keeping those who are immunocompromised or vulnerable potential patients safe. Again, if you are a healthy individual and you're able to get over this virus, that's great. However, there are certain communities that do require extra attention, extra care, and deserve our participation in making sure that they're safe. So with that, here are a few tips to protect yourself and in turn your loved ones and colleagues. The first tip is to wash your hands. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water and be generous. The virus is able to stay on your hands for approximately 20 minutes plus. That being said, if you come into contact with an object that may or may not have been contaminated, do not hesitate, just wash. That being said, as a second tip, do not touch your face. Avoid touching your nose and your mouth so that you could not allow the virus to directly enter your respiratory tract. It starts causing problems when it gets into our lungs. Now, because this virus travels via droplet transmission, that means that when someone coughs or sneezes, a droplet is released and it kind of lingers up in the air and then it falls down to the ground. Now, because of that, that brings us to our next points. Tip number 3 is to keep a safe distance from someone. It's recommended to keep a distance of approximately 2 meters. However, some droplets can travel farther than that, some less than that, but 2 meters is what's recommended. Tip number 4, because a droplet can fall on things, it can fall on surfaces. So definitely get into a routine of disinfecting any surface that you use on a regular basis. Not a regular basis is once a week. We're in a pandemic, so make it frequent. Tip number 5, if it can fall on a surface, it can fall on the ground. So that means that when you're walking around, you can potentially step on a virus outside. That means that could be on your shoes. So a nice practice to have is, and this is tip number 5, to remove your shoes before directly entering your home or have a designated space to be able to remove your shoes at. Don't be walking around with your shoes in the home. This should also be a consideration for when you're removing your clothing. Remove it in one designated space for yourself. And that brings us to the last point, tip number 6, have a routine when you come home. When you get home, strip from your outside clothing, go wash yourself thoroughly, change into your clean indoor clothing, and then interact with your loved ones, because these may be individuals who are immunocompromised, elderly, or even infants. And further from this, you can really consider barrier precautions, and that's tip number 7. Maybe in addition to carrying your hand sanitizer and your masks potentially, you might want to carry around with you a couple of disposable gloves for when you're touching door handles, or maybe even when you're going to the grocery store and you're using the carts and touching those. And on top of this too, another option is to carry around large plastic garbage bags for if you do have to travel on public sources, such as the transit, a bus, or even on a flight. It's important to recognize that surfaces are everywhere and that some materials are harder to disinfect than others. For example, cloth versus leather. So with that, those are the tips for this Tuesday. It is a solo tip, only due to the fact that the news for the pandemic has been very recent. It's very important for us to get this information out, and it's very important for us to stay safe and keep our communities safe by doing our most. If you've been affected by COVID-19 in some form or another, not necessarily medically in terms of like your health, but if you've been affected with respect to your examinations and such, do your most to be able to reschedule your exams, talk to the bodies that organize these examinations, such as ECFMG and onwards, and get the right information from them and direction on what to do next. Good luck, everyone. Happy studying, and stay safe.